Welcome to the Better Outcomes podcast, where we discuss all things leadership, sales, and communication in Australian business. At Better Outcomes Training, we provide world-class training solutions for businesses who want to arm their teams with cutting-edge skills to lead better, sell better, and enjoy more success, purpose, and profit from the work they do. For a full breakdown of all the courses we offer, visit www.better-outcomes.com.au. There's also a link in the description. Now, on to today's podcast. Enjoy. Computer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Better Outcomes Training Podcast. My name's Craig. I got the intro right 2 in a row because I did 2 bad ones and I've done 2 good ones. I'm opposite Paul Harrison. Paulie, how are you?
I'm exceedingly well, Kaz. Thank you very much. Great to be here. Great to be here, everybody, as well, on a Sunday morning. How's that for commitment?
Sunday mornings, man. Best time to get some work done. Good time to go for a walk, too. They're pretty quiet out there.
Yeah.
All podcasts as you're charging along with your little legs going. So
the little legs, there you go.
These little legs. These little legs take me places, I tell you. You have to get up early if you go in the same place I'm going. So you've got to get up early, boys. How's your week been, Paulie? Big week. Bit stressful, I hear, at your end.
Yeah, it was been a big week, man. It was a good week. It was a big week. I had 3 days training folks down at the company that specializes in trucking and lorries and buses, which was awesome, and teaching these people how to be able to present publicly, because they had like the end of their future leadership program, and they were all giving their presentation to the senior management, the board, and of course there was a lot of nerves around that, but absolutely phenomenal group of people. And then Friday, I got to present to a group, just a 2-hour session on Friday, which was great as well. It was a big end of the week. A lot of focus on, when I got such a small amount of time, I really want to be able to give them something of value, and very often if I have a full day, at least I can ask each person, or at least 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, I can ask each person what they want to take away, and I can make sure that I can personalize the training. But if I've only got 2 hours, very often you've got to be able to try and sense where people are at. And it's a little bit more challenging, but again, I always want to make sure that I can deliver something absolutely phenomenal to people. And there was a round of applause at the end, so I'm hoping that's a good sign.
Were they clapping because you did well, or because it was after lunch on a Friday and they got to go home?
Maybe because it's finished. I don't know.
You never know. That's good. Big week. So I bumped up against a few things this week, and I thought it'd be good to have a bit of a talk about this subject, and it just seemed to explode. I didn't realize how deep this one was and how much there is to it. So chances are it's probably going to end up being a 2-parter, because I don't think I've ever written this much before.
Fantastic.
I've got down here on my paper, and we're going to talk today about dealing with difficult people. We've touched on the subject a few times, but we've never really gone into depth about it. We've talked about dealing with difficult people. It's popped up in a few different areas, communication and negotiation, all those kind of areas. And we've talked about difficult conversations, so they kind of tie in together. But this one's really quite deep in terms of what a difficult person is, because everyone's got their own interpretations of that. If you're actually dealing with a difficult person, or if it's something completely different.
Yeah.
And even down to maybe you're the difficult person. Maybe it's you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So personally, I don't mind dealing with difficult people. My interpretation of difficult people is more along the lines of they're quite headstrong, they're quite opinionated, they got high standards.
Yeah.
They're good at what they do, and they have sometimes they tend to get tunnel vision a little bit in terms of, I'm very, very good at this. This is what I want to do. I don't mind dealing with people like that.
Yeah.
Because I've done it quite a lot over my years, and done correctly, and you handle them correctly, you work with them correctly, you end up with a really good outcome.
Yeah.
I don't think either of us had in mind at the start. You end up with something different because you make them think out of the box. Sometimes you add in little bits and pieces here and get them to change what they're thinking about. So that's kind of my definition of difficult people. Paulie, you've had a lot more experience than me in this, especially when it comes to teaching people. Talk to me about your version of dealing with difficult people.
Yeah, well, because what I got to start with is, and whenever I'm teaching this as far as leadership or communications or sales as well, because obviously you're dealing with a lot of hard-nosed decision makers very often in complex sales, but I have to start with a question with regards to, is it difficult people or is it people who illustrate difficult behaviors? And the reason I asked that question, yeah, I actually had a client who said to me, "Oh, I suppose you're just going to tell us there's no such thing as a difficult person." No, there are difficult people out there. But
Yes.
my argument very much is, and I would ask the question of everybody, it's like, is it difficult people illustrating difficult behaviors? And the reason why I say that is because I want to be very clear on how people label others. Okay. Because this is the thing, folks, and we don't want to talk about it, but I think a lot of the time, I think the vast majority of the time, it is very, very easy for us to judge others, and it's very easy for us to label other people as well. And I think we do this. I think it's part of how the brain doesn't sort of conserves its energy. So we're not burning cognitive energy, not having to question things too much. So often we want to put a label on someone, say, oh, they're just a difficult person. And the fact of the matter is if I consider somebody a difficult person, and I've seen this happen, and very often then I feel that I have the moral high ground to go after them. Because if I don't like them and I've called them a difficult person, and my mate, cuz, also thinks they're a difficult person, now effectively I believe I have some degree of moral high ground to go after them. And that just breaks down communications massively. And here's my thought process around that. If I can find out that they have other people who like them and get on well with them, then maybe, to your point a little bit earlier, maybe I can make a shift in how I approach. Now, it's not an easy thought process to have, particularly if there's been a high degree of emotion around dealing with this person in the past. Very often people might get into the thought process, and I've certainly been there before, and I'm sure most of the listeners have as well, is that sometimes I dealt with somebody who I believe is a difficult person. I might think, well, I don't want to get on with that person. I don't want to. But the bottom line is, again, and if I come back to the North Star of everything we do at Better Outcomes, it's how do I stay in the right frame of mind to get those better outcomes? If I just consider somebody a bad person, then you can rest assured, and this will go for everybody as well, we tend to project how we feel about people as well. And that doesn't lead to good things. It really doesn't. If we've got to sit down, have a meeting, and the two of us really dislike each other, I know it's perfectly normal, but it doesn't get us the best possible outcomes, because there's resentment, there is negativity. That negative emotion very often can dominate the conversation. And again, I know it's absolutely normal and it's human and happens every day, but it doesn't help us get those best outcomes. So I have to start with that question. Is it a difficult person, or is it somebody illustrating difficult behaviors? And I'm not condoning bad behaviors that people take on, but the fact of the matter is if I can get that right, then at least I can start becoming a little bit more strategic with regards to how I actually deal with them. Does that resonate, Cuz?
Absolutely. I've got the same kind of theories going on here in terms of, is it a difficult person or is difficult behavior? And there's a lot in the definition on when, maybe it's an interpretation thing, a miscommunication thing, maybe it's even cultural, maybe they're older than you or different background, different, even different industries, different parts of the same industry, whether it's you're a technical person versus, say, a more social HR person.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing. So there's a lot of the time it's a simple misunderstanding or misinterpretation of basic foundational stuff that ends up snowballing into something that becomes horrible, like a small problem. Proportion. Like I said, as I started thinking about this a lot more this week and started realizing there was a lot of different layers to this, I thought, oh geez, we're going to start talking about this one, but where do you start? So I mean, like you said, everything from, are they a difficult person, or are they actually being a bully, or are they a narcissist? Is it a simple miscommunication? Is it something that you just don't like about that person? And by that I mean, do they have the same name as someone who's wronged you in the past, or do they remind you of someone you don't like, or do they support a different team?
Yes.
You know, have you got off on the wrong foot with this person, or something as simple as that?
Yeah.
Personality clashed, experience clash. Is it actually do you think that person's difficult, or is it the problem that you're dealing with that person that you've then associated with that person and decided that they're difficult? Because maybe you're quite a strong-minded person, you're very competitive, you want your way, and
Yeah.
you couldn't get your own way for whatever reason. And so all of a sudden, I don't like that person because they're difficult. And
Absolutely.
you know, so being able to wind this back is and unfold it, and like you always say, be self-aware, relax, and try and figure out what's going on a fundamental level I think can solve a lot of these problems. Yeah, what do you reckon?
I think the problem's always going to be there. I think they can become less of a problem with using the right type of approaches. And, what we say at Better Outcomes, particularly around communication, leadership, selling, is you always meet your target audience at their view of the world. And by that, I mean, I need to understand what's going on with this person. What is the best way for me to approach them? And I really love the observation you made with regards to maybe, and I know we're stereotyping here, but maybe somebody who's very technically minded versus somebody who's very gregarious and people focused.
Yeah.
If HR emails somebody who's very tech and says, how was your weekend? How's the family? How's this? How's that? The next thing, the technical person might think, well, just get to the point. What are you after? I don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
And if the technical person emails HR and doesn't ask about the weekend, it's like, well, that person is rude.
Rude.
And we sit back and we think about it, we laugh about it, but I've been in situations like that before as well. And it's until I realized those people acted like that with everyone else, then I read, okay, it's not just me. Yes. And that actually gave me a lot more peace of mind, which was good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And
it's good,
Exactly. That's a really good point that I wanted to touch on. And it's something that I see a lot is a lot of the time when you talk about their view of the world, it's not just the way they think and their values and their beliefs, but also sometimes you have to match their communication level.
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm technical, which I am, tradie, short, sharp, simple answers.
Yeah.
Because it's more of a black and white question.
Yeah.
So, short, simple, to the point, bang, I'm in a hurry, I've got to go. Whereas if I ask that of someone who's quite long-winded and I want a short, simple, oh man, I haven't got time for this.
Yeah.
I'll switch off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that can happen with aggressive people as well, or people who want to dominate. Sometimes they don't understand that they're being aggressive and dominating and maybe condescending to a little bit because you're matching their energy. That's just what they do.
Yeah.
And if you sit there and maybe cower a little bit, you're intimidated by them, which is perfectly understandable with some people, that they don't get it. They're not going to change. You have to change your behavior.
Well, I would say it's easier for you to change your behavior to adapt to the situation. Again, being that communication chameleon. I mean, listen, there are people who are being, who get dealt with from a bullying point of view. There's, a lot of clients that I've worked with have shared sort of insights to me on that. And again, it's something that happens on the regular, but the bullying, the aggressive type of approach very often comes out. And I'll tell you, Cuz, I think that you've just hit on a phenomenal point there, is that when I'm teaching my clients how to deal with aggressive types, particularly the types that are aggressive to try and get their point met or get their needs met, I share with them a technique called the Powerline, which is effectively something to say to be able to buy you some time and also get you out of the situation that you're in. And the Powerline, whenever I use it, I would say between 75 to 80% of the time, it's effectively, if I'm in a meeting with somebody and I can feel both of us are getting heightened emotions, I know there's a certain level where when we get to that point, nothing good comes after that situation. Okay. Nothing good comes after that point. And then I'll use this technique called the Powerline. And the Powerline effectively will get me out of the situation. Also, it's going to show this person they're not going to get their needs met to be able in dealing with me like that. And here's a fascinating thing. When I hit this Powerline, and they're good terminologies to use, they're good structures to use, probably 75 to 80% of the time, I'll get a apology in that second. And there's 4 steps of that power line. After the second step, which will take place literally maybe 4 seconds, 5 seconds, there'll be an apology straight away. Why do you reckon there'll be an apology so quickly in that situation?
I would suggest, without really knowing what a power line is, without I know what a power line is, but without the exact approach you're taking, I would say something along the lines of you're making them aware of their behavior.
Beautiful. Perfect. Exactly. You're absolutely right. And people don't we talk so much about self-awareness, but I don't, especially when emotions get heightened, I don't think that we have a high degree of self-awareness. So as soon as I've identified it, as soon as I've used that step 1 of the power line, step 2 of the power line, then effectively there's an apology 75 to 80% of the time straight away, because it creates a high degree of awareness in the other party. And then the fascinating thing is that people start to realize that they're not going to get their way treating you like that. They're not going to communicate with you like that. And once I've got my client into a space where they are comfortable and confident in dealing with those sort of confrontational type of situations, or people who go there, then effectively you can keep teaching people. You can keep using the power line. It's another time out. That's fantastic. And then people come around to how they actually approach things. Because here's the thing: human behavior that's rewarded is repeated. So if somebody says or does something and then gets the outcome they're after, then they'll keep doing it. So if I've used aggression to get my way, I'll keep using it. Not that I would, but you understand my point. That effectively I'll keep doing it until I stop getting the outcome. And that's what, I think I understand why it happens, but also there's some massive shortcomings with it as well. If you get your way being aggressive, then you're gonna catch some steel in your back somewhere along the line,
Precisely. And I think before we go any further, we should do the normal disclaimer that you say around this type of thing. I can't say it as eloquently as you, but basically you are owed a safe working environment.
Yeah.
You'll say it way better than me before I butcher it. So hit them with it, please.
Yeah. So obviously your employer, you affords you a duty of care as an employer there as well. So yeah, just be aware of that. Not that I've ever said that in a classroom and people have been surprised by it. I think everybody's across that to some degree, but you're owed a duty of care in your work environment. So yeah, just be across that, folks.
Yeah. And we're trying to help you up to a certain point, and after that, it's probably further authorities that need to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options, and here's the actual thing, because whenever I'm training on a one-to-many basis, or when we're training on a one-to-many basis, we've spoken about this before. We will always teach what we consider best practice in dealing with difficult situations, or the best practice in any scenario we find ourselves in, or that the clients find themselves in. However, with that said, particularly around dealing with difficult people or some degree of high emotion around these things, there is always, that's why I always say to clients, listen, if you want to have a one-to-one conversation with me, you can give me more information on exactly what you're dealing with, and we can tweak the approach. Because whenever I'm doing one-to-one coaching, very often there's a high degree of emotion around these things. There's high risk, high reward dealing with these folks, particularly in things like mergers and acquisitions, or political plays. When I say political plays, high level C-suite, interpersonal conflicts and stuff like that. So that's really when I'm going to get an idea of exactly what the scenario is, and then I can give further guidance on a bespoke situation. Because the truth of the matter is, I think human beings, very often when we speak about these things, we think about worst case scenario. We think about the monster, the actual monster that we're dealing with. And if the case is that severe, then I need to understand exactly why this conflict is happening. And there might be a couple of things, and I would deal with all of these things differently. There might be just a personality clash, and that's going to be different. There might be a past experience that we've got negative labels of each other. I might have somebody who just doesn't communicate well. I might have somebody who doesn't have the confidence that they could actually speak well in that situation. So there's a lot of different factors that I would need to know before I can give guidance on a specific situation there as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
Hopefully these difficult people are they're in a minority of situations you find yourself in, not a majority.
Yes, precisely. So when it comes to dealing with, let's say, bullies, narcissists even, I'm not going to sit here and try and, label people or diagnose them.
Yeah.
That'll be up to you, up to your own judgment or however you see fit. But I think one of the main things when you're dealing with someone who you consider a bully or a narcissist is number one, don't let them get a hold of like your North Star. Don't let them know what your North Star is in terms of what you're really passionate about, because they won't let it go. They won't let it go, and they might end up using that against you. So you need to start setting boundaries around their behavior, your behavior, internal boundaries and external boundaries. So I mean, like, if they're upsetting you and they're constantly stepping over a line or doing something wrong, you need to make them aware of it, like you just talked about with the power line. But maybe you set an internal boundary in terms of, I don't need to spend that much time with this person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't need to engage with them any more than absolutely necessary. So I don't need to draw it out. Get in short, sharp. You don't have to be smart ass about it, or you don't have to try and roll your eyes when you're talking to them or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or if they ask you what the time is, you have to say, well, about time you got to watch. You don't have to be something like that. But
is that a great put down in the trade?
It's like an old schoolyard one, isn't it? But you need to have. They're not going to change their behavior. You have to change your behavior towards them. You have to understand what, how you're reacting to it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to stress you. Like,
yeah,
dealing with difficult people, whether they're a bully, a narcissist, or whatever. There's enough stress in the workplace that we've talked about.
Yeah.
This is going to wear on you. It might even wear on the company in terms of staff retention or being able to attract staff or meeting deadlines, customer service, the whole, because you don't want to work with someone, you might miss the deadline on a project, so massive ramifications and dealing with people on a professional level. So it might just be a case of you just get into the conversation, you get up, they ask you a question, just nice and simple. Remembering that just because you don't like them or maybe you see them as a difficult person or whatever, that doesn't mean you have the right to lower your standards to meet them, because other people are always watching how you talk, how you talk to people. If I'm interacting with someone I don't like and I'm screaming and shouting and yelling at them, someone else is watching. So you have to be aware of that as well. Like, it's not just their reputation on the line, it's you as well.
Absolutely. A couple of things on that, Cuz. Firstly, that aspect of narcissist, and that term is thrown around so commonly now. It's so common, and I think it's almost losing its meaning, because everybody's referring to other people as narcissists the whole time. But there seems to be a huge difference in sort of a psychological definition of that term narcissist versus the way it's thrown around. Very often I think it's just a sort of a quick go-to without having any sort of degree of psychological evaluation. And we understand, you understand human beings, you understand why this happens. But the second thing is that point that you made with regards to, if you're bullying people, or if you are shouting and screaming at people, or if you're gossiping about people, or if you're talking negatively about people, or if you're involved in office politics, and this is, we've all been involved with it somewhere along the line, I'm sure, but sort of some negative talk about other people. Here's the other thing that we have to realize, particularly around things like office politics, is if you are talking negatively about other people, here's what starts to happen. Very often, if you find somebody goes out, actually gets involved in this, and it's like they're running to tell this person, running to tell this person, you've got to realize that you start getting a reputation for that as well. And as you start getting a reputation for talking negatively about other people, then your credibility goes down significantly. And I've seen this happening a hell of a lot, and it's brutal. I mean, we've spoken about credibility a fair few times, but if you start getting a bad reputation for talking negatively about other people, the truth of the matter is, I think that people who deal with a lot of folks they start developing a high degree of emotional intelligence, particularly when there's some risk versus reward, and you've got to get it right. If you don't get it right, it's not going to work out well. But very often they can start seeing people who talk negatively about other people on the regular, and that really starts impacting your credibility. And there's that old saying with regards to take it from whence it comes. So if you're talking negatively about one person, the person you're talking to, if they've got any degree of sort of experience with other people, you start to realize it's just a matter of time until that person starts talking negatively about you. So it's a rough situation to be in. And again, I know it's part of it's human behavior. I understand it. I really do. I consume books on the stuff on the regular. So I understand it's human behavior, but it doesn't get us the best outcomes. It really, really doesn't. But I think there's a lot of motivations for people to talk negatively about others, to try and bring them down and stuff like that. It's motivations for them to do it, but you pay the price for it in the long term. I'm yet to see people undertake bad behaviors and get good outcomes for the long term. It just doesn't happen. It just really doesn't happen.
That's right. It's there's always a price to pay.
Yeah.
Always a price to pay. You've always got to try and be kind if you can, because otherwise it's going to come back and, you'll pay the price somewhere along the line in terms of your reputation, or people just won't want to do business with you anymore.
Yeah.
You have to have a real think about, I mean, even with office gossip or company gossip, you're going to be excluded from conversations. People, if you're seen as a gossip around, people are going to purposely exclude you from conversations, or they're not going to talk to you on the level that you want them to, because they're scared of you sharing it. They're going to hold back a little bit, and all of a sudden it's not a good place to be. Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially people who take their business life very seriously. If you've got your career, the type of people who are listening to this, you have your career, you have big desires within your career. And I've seen people act in a way that was just like, I've looked at this person, I thought, you're not who I thought you were initially. And then from there, I didn't trust them. I liked them as a person, but it was just like, I don't trust you. I'm thinking I don't trust you. And as soon as I don't trust somebody, I will limit my downside exposure. I will not risk anything with that person. And then it becomes very much about things like, how are you? Good to see you. That's it. I'm not sort of, so what are you up to on the weekend? This, that. The defenses are up, man, because again, and if somebody doesn't trust you, that is a hell of a put down. It's a hell of a put down. I think if somebody says that they don't trust you because of some behavior that they've seen, that can be a pretty rough go.
Yeah,
it really can.
Absolutely, that would cut me so deep. And if that was said to me, I would instantly, maybe not be backtracking, but I would instantly be wanting to know why.
Yeah.
What I did wrong. Because like we said earlier, it could be a simple miscommunication in terms of, I said something, but what did you hear? Did I say it wrong? It could have been, my intent was correct, but my delivery was wrong, or you received it wrong. But something as simple as that maybe you could smooth over straight away, or that was it. If it's bigger than that, then that's what it is. If you've broken that person's trust, like you said, they'll always be looking at you through kind of other glasses.
Yeah.
We've spoken about this before quite often, about how when you lose someone's trust, it can be pretty much the end of the relationship, depending on whether you have to deal with them all the time or not, and what circumstance it's in as well. So trust is a big thing. So
it is, man. And it's, again, let's consider that we're dealing with well-meaning people here, because there are people out there that will try and play Machiavellian games or 48 laws of power, and they'll try and play these political maneuvering games, sort of the art of war, the prince, this type of stuff. They'll try and play these games, and they think they're playing it well, but you just ultimately, people see what you're doing, because the vast majority of people read a book like The Prince or something like that, and they think that they can use all these clever manipulation techniques. But in all the years of business that I've been in, I've seen a lot of people try to play games like that. There's only been one person ever that I've seen who's really played those games well. But the vast majority of people think they're playing chess, but they're playing checkers, and then again, it's just like, I see what you're doing and I don't trust you. Now sometimes that person might be the dragon that holds all the gold. So, I still have to deal with the dragon from time to time, or that, that person that I don't trust, but I will certainly be very down the line with them. I won't be sort of, overly friendly or anything like that. So listen, let's get this done. I want them very clear on the value I bring to that table as well. So that's the other aspect is, I think one of the things that keeps people in the right frame of mind is seeing the value again that they bring to the table. It's like, and also I found that people are normally people become easier to work with when they see the value that you bring. And here's the crazy thing, cuz we all want to be seen as people who bring value, but the truth of the matter is yes, sometimes other people do see it, but the vast majority of time people are battling with their own insecurities, or they're working with something else, or they're updating their social media status to take notice of anything that they don't need to focus on, aka seeing the value that you bring. So another thing that we teach, particularly around influence and persuasion, you remember this aspect, with regards to firstly seeing the value you bring, but being able to secondly make that person aware of, listen, this is the value I bring. Okay, not in a braggadocious way, but if we do it really well, they discover the value that you bring, and then they start thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to start working to try and be a little bit more positive with this person as well. Yeah,
that's right. And I'll just come back to, if you're dealing with someone, maybe a bully or someone like that, don't lower yourself to their standards. Don't, try and take the high road by all means.
It's tempting though, man, sometimes.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I'm a bully, self-confessed bully. I can be a bully but I'm only a bully if I like you.
You've never been a bully, man. Come on, what are you talking
only
about?
If I like you. I'm horrible to you if I like you, eh? If I don't like you and be nice to you all the time, I don't like you, I don't trust you. I'm sweet.
Yeah.
One of the boys at work turned around to me a couple of weeks ago and goes, Kazi, you're a bully. I said, it's because I like you. You're really cool.
What a comeback.
And another guy said, oh, yeah, if Kazi's giving you a hard time, it means he likes you, so fire back. All of a sudden, they shouldn't have told him that, because this guy's firing back and smashing me to bits. So I'm copping grief from everywhere. But so communication is always the best way to go. Now, so is it a bully or is it a narcissist? Is it just that you don't like them, or is there something they've said? So those are things you've got to try and clear up. What about if it's a personality clash? And by personality clash, we'll go back to that HR and technical one about meeting them on their level of communication. Always, for me, this all comes back to communication. I reckon there's so much that can be solved through, or so much is caused through simple miscommunication.
Yeah. Go on.
Oh, okay. I'll go. So it's just making, like we talked about, it's making sure that whatever you're saying is received properly, your intent behind it, and that you're actively listening to the person. Maybe you don't like them because you don't understand them. You're not 100% sure of where they're coming from, or you haven't asked them why you guys aren't getting along. Simple, like maybe your boss is asking you to go to that person and ask for advice. Go and see Paul. He knows all about it. Paulie's sitting in his office, just wants to be left alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're in every 2 minutes bugging him. He doesn't realize you don't realize how valuable your experience and insights are to this person, and he doesn't realize he's bugging you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Simple miscommunication. All of a sudden, that's it. We're on the same page.
100%. Yeah, 100%. One of the things I would say on this, Cuz, though, is again the most important aspect. I think when I'm working with my clients and dealing with difficult people, is having to keep my clients in the right frame of mind, because that is the biggest thing. That is the biggest challenge. I think everything else we can work with. And I'll tell you this: one of the techniques I've realized is one of the best ways to be able to stay in a better frame of mind to deal with this person is try to imagine or get some ideas or tell myself a story with regards to why they're acting this way. And I'll give you an example here. Very often the labels we put on people or on circumstances dictate how we react to them. So if I'm driving along and somebody pulls out in front of me and I have to hit the brakes, it's like, what could go through my head in that moment? This person can't drive. They don't respect my time. They don't respect my life. They're texting. They're just arrogant, this, that, the next thing. I can put those negative labels on them. And then I'm very angry with this person because of the negative labels I've just automatically put on. And that puts me into fight or flight, and I want to go after that person, okay? Or I'm furious and angry and, upset for the next sort of half an hour or something like that. Or I could attach a different meaning to it. And it could be, as that person's pulled out, I had to hit the brakes. I could put the label on with regards to, my goodness, if somebody was driving like that, they must have their sick child in the car going to the hospital or something like that. Now, the thing is, the truth of the matter is, unless you're going to track that person down, you're never going to find out the reason anyway. And what I say to my clients is, I'm not justifying anything they do. I'm not justifying the person's behavior, the other person's behavior. But what I do want to be able to do is stay in the right frame of mind. If I think that this person's got their child's sick or something like that in the car, then at least I can stay in a more compassionate state rather than an angry, aggressive state. Yeah. And that just puts a whole different frame on it. I'll tell you this as well. Speaking from past experiences where I've had conflicts with people, there have been, not everybody, but there's been a few people that I've had conflict with over the years that I really had problems with. And, there's been people that I felt fully justified in giving both barrels to verbally and what have you. And a fair few times it's come to the fore with regards to why they were behaving like that. And I'll tell you what, man, regret is that you said what you said without knowing the full situation. I would rather take both barrels from people and stuff like that rather than say what I said or go after them and then it comes out exactly what the problem was. Yeah. So that regret doesn't leave. It's like you feel so shit about it. It's like, okay, you can have that much significant amounts of regret or guilt of what you said, and then it all came out what was going on there, and then effectively what happened is that can be enough of a significant experience for you to make a change in the way that you behave. So that's another factor. That's another factor with regards to sometimes what other people are going through. And I'm not making a cop out here. I'm not justifying their behavior. I'm really not, because we're all responsible for our behaviors. We have to be. But it just keeps my clients in a better state. It keeps me in a better state, thinking, what's this person going on with? And there was one person I was doing some work with a while back, who was illustrating some real negative behaviors, and then some other stuff came out, and it was just like, okay, all right, well, now I'm going to think more. But here's the other thing: if I think more compassionately about them, again, I'm not condoning their behaviors, but it allows me to stay in a much better state. I'm not going to get hurt if I'm compassionate. If I'm angry, I'm going to get hurt. If I feel wronged, and maybe I am wronged, but how am I interpreting it?
That's right. You're making me think about how much of those incidents. I mean, I've still done. Everyone's guilty of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your foot in it, or just, like you said, they're acting a certain way constantly. You give them a barrel, you give them a bit of a spray. All of a sudden, something else comes out. I've managed to avoid so many situations of conflict like that accidentally because I'm a good communicator.
Really? Beautiful.
I managed to, I don't know, I'm just a talker, and I don't really have social anxiety in new situations or anything like that. I break the ice, say something dumb, criticize myself or whatever. Ice is broken, we're off to the races. We've talked about this for a while, and I accidentally uncover so many what we call black swans, unknowns or things about people. Before you turned my attention to how good I was at talking to people, I would always say to people, oh, I know this about that person. And they'd say, how do you know that? And I said, well, if you get someone talking about what they like, they'll generally talk too much. They'll open up to you,
Yeah.
But they don't do that to everyone.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I just thought that's what you did. But it was what I was able to do. And I'm able to find out things about people that other people don't know about them and share. Sometimes it's a burden because you end up knowing a lot of stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
all right. And you go deep and dark with some people and they let their fears and their worries out on you, which, I don't mind. A problem shared is a problem halved, in my opinion. But if you're able to come more fine-tuned with your communication in terms of dealing with someone picking up on things that aren't quite right or situations that have taken a turn for the worse, you can avoid so many of those foot and mouth situations.
Yeah.
And better outcomes at the end. Yeah. So staying level-headed, staying calm, clear, which is hard enough in itself, but clear communication. One thing I did think about is when someone takes a deep breath before they reply to you, that means so much. It's only something I've recently come about, and I've noticed it in a couple of people. If I ask you a question and you answer straight away,
Yeah.
to me, it's like there's no thought process put into that.
Yeah. I like it.
But if you were to ask me a question and I said, well, Paulie, this is what I think. You immediately get, or I do, I don't know about yourself, but I immediately realize two things. Number one, that person's actually got something to say.
Yeah.
And number two, they've listened to me. I feel listened to, so taking the breath sometimes can be like the opening of a sentence, like the first word, the opening stanza. And then I guess this helps with, I learned it a little bit in Toastmasters where you're trying to stay calm when you're standing up in front of people and talking. So taking a deep breath gives you that little bit of pause time to think and trying to keep your voice as calm and as level as possible. Slow things down a little bit. It buys you more time, but it also puts the other person into a better frame of mind. Is that something you understand? Does that make sense or not?
It makes perfect sense, my man. And I'll tell you what, actually, it's a very powerful thing when it comes to presenting. It's actually something I trained the team on Tuesday and Wednesday with regards to, it's something I call considered speech. So we were talking about pausing. When you pause as far as a presentation, you give people some time to reflect, particularly after asking a rhetorical question or something. I said to them, take a pause, and then I showed them how taking a pause very often could be a subconscious rapport builder with the audience. And I think certainly to your point there, if somebody just fires off what the next thing is, that that you ask a question, they just bang straight back at you. It's not considered thought. But if you really go, oh, that's a great question, you go, I think the best answer for that would be, and then get into it. Now you've considered that whole situation, which is almost like a subconscious compliment to the person you're talking to, which is a beautiful little rapport builder that I'm teaching very, very high level presenters, is how do we build that rapport with the audience on a much higher level, which is, the values and beliefs alignments, which are great. Anytime you talk about rapport or connection, you talk about body language, smiling and stuff like that, but it's the internal stuff as well. And then the stuff that's sort of hidden under different layers. And that pausing is very powerful to do. That's nice, considered language. Absolutely.
Yes. I also think it would help people who are like the opposite of me, who are more suffer from like social anxiety, or don't really like talking. I think that can be. So a lot of people end up getting worried about what they say.
Yeah.
So don't really end up saying anything. That kind of Peter, so how you going? And they end up saying too much and don't actually say what they want to say. Then they get more wound up and more socially, more social anxiety. And then they come away from the situation thinking, geez, I said all that. Now I look like a moron and I didn't even want to say to that person. So maybe setting a frame around that. If you think you struggle with, or you struggle with social situations, taking that deep breath and looking at the person and even saying something as simple as like, not really comfortable talking about this, or I find this hard to talk about, really helps the other person understand where you are and
Absolutely.
sets the other person. If they're a normal, well-adjusted person, they're able to pick up on that and go, okay, this person has something to say. And then,
Charming.
yes, it disarms you and it makes you realize that the other person, okay, well, hey, if you're struggling with this, that's cool. I can listen. I'm
Yeah.
here for it. You know,
Yeah.
it's like if you're asking someone to help, you know, or you're saying something, you look like a helpful person. You're kind of setting the tone, or you're setting the frame for that conversation, which I think would be a massive benefit just to start with, just to get the ball rolling, you know, because it puts you on the same level.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, people, particularly people who are feeling uncomfortable in circumstances, there is a technique where I will teach people to pre-frame, particularly from a presenting point of view, if they are pre-framing their discomfort or their concerns. And I'll give you some examples on this. There's a gentleman I worked with a few years ago who had a cleft palate, and I was teaching him how to present. And he had massive insecurities about his cleft palate. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I want you to feel as comfortable as possible. So what we're going to do before you start presenting is just pre-frame to let everybody know that if they have any questions because they didn't quite understand you, it's perfectly normal because you've got a cleft palate. It's like, fine. And I wanted him to feel okay with that before starting to present. I say exactly the same thing for anybody who's presenting to an audience who their first language is different to the audience's first language.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is like,
yeah.
if I had a heavy Scottish accent and I'm presenting to people who never met a Scottish person, then effectively I might say, right, as you can tell, I got a wee bit of an accent. So if you can't understand what I'm saying, feel free to ask me a question. But I would pre-frame it up front, so that because and also knowing that the first 90 seconds of any presentation, people are tuning their ear in a little bit. But just to say it up front and that you're okay with people asking additional questions if they don't quite understand what you're saying. And the thing is, what the nice part about that is it takes a lot of pressure off the presenter, you know. And if the pressure is off, and if you say, you know, I battle with a little bit of, between you and me, I battle with a little bit of sort of social anxiety. So I'm not overly comfortable, but I'm happy to do the best I can what I have. You're only going to find good people are going to be very, very, very generous with that, you know?
Precisely. Getting it out of the way up front can really can change everything. Because when you think about communication, the basis of communication is that's who I am. That's what you know about me. And if I don't open my mouth, you're not going to know anything about me.
Yeah.
You know, you're only going to judge me on how I look, my shirt, my haircut, my glasses, how I walk, whatever, what I drive. Until I open my mouth and start talking, you're not going to know anything about me. So the other thing that springs to mind when you were just saying that about, you know, putting it out there at the start is if you are presenting and you're a technical person, it might be good to say, I used to use this with some people, whether it was a form of it with apprentices or guys that I hadn't worked with before, guys I was giving instructions to, or even if I was meeting a client about something work they want done, I'd say to them, listen, I might be talking too fast. I might be ahead of you. Like, I know more about this than you do. I'm only trying to bring you along.
Yeah.
I don't want to confuse you or say something wrong. If I'm moving too fast, stop me. If you don't understand something, stop me straight away and I'll try and explain it to you as we go. I don't want you to get to the end of this and just be nodding all the way through and walk off and go, what was he talking about?
Absolutely.
No, so you don't want that disconnect. I think what you just said, that pre-frame is a very smart way when you're presenting of getting what you think may be the problem out there, kind of like an accusation order, getting the problem out of the way up front so that people understand that you're open to questions or comments. Or if they don't understand what you're saying, they can go, hey, what did you mean by that? Your Billy Connolly accent got in the way, that kind of thing. So I think that can be very helpful when it comes to that form of communication. Otherwise, sometimes you end up, if you don't set boundaries or pre-frame or frames, boundaries, topics, even an outcome for a conversation, if you don't set that at the start, you can end up talking about a lot of different things and really end up talking about nothing.
Yeah.
You know, like a meeting that you go to, hey, we've got lots to talk about today. Let's get
Yeah.
to, at the end, you're like, what do we talk about?
Yeah,
We didn't
absolutely.
really settle on anything, as opposed to like even setting the outcome of the conversation. Like, Paulie, me and you are going to sit down, we're going to bang this out, and when we're finished, we're going to be on the same page about what's happening with this podcast moving forward. You know, that kind of thing, just setting either a pre-frame or an outcome or something, really helps put the other person on the same page as you, yeah?
Absolutely, 100%. And actually, something else I challenge my clients to do, particularly people who have a lot of meetings, is I'll give them 2 questions before they go into any meeting. 2 questions to consider before they go into the meeting. The first question is what is the outcome that I want for this conversation? And the second question is, what do I know about this person that will allow me to communicate in a way to get that outcome? So if I'm asking myself those 2 questions, what's the actual outcome I want for this conversation? It gives me that outcome I want to focus on. And secondly is what do I know about this person will allow me to communicate in a way to get that outcome. And once I can identify that, then again, I just have that higher degree of awareness around being able to present for those best outcomes.
Yes.
Because otherwise we find ourselves just talking from our view of the world, and we're just going through the motions with a lot of meetings a lot of the time, you know, unless they're well chaired. And I think meetings are great. Absolutely love them. But there's firstly a lot of meetings that could be replaced by an email, and there's a lot of meetings that are not as efficient as they possibly could be, and that's where they get bad reputations.
Yeah, and I've been in so many meetings where I feel like I'm just wasting my time there.
Yeah,
I don't need to be there. I feel like walking out, but that's just rude. Just sit there. I can think of 3 or 4 off the top of my head where they've asked me at the end, you know, you're right with all this, and I'm like, I don't even know why I was here, man. I honestly can't tell you why I was here. I've got so much to do, and they're like, oh, didn't you learn about this or that? You didn't even talk about that. You talked about all this other stuff, and now we're out of time. We've got to go. So
yeah,
making sure that you stay on topic, maybe keep them shorter, concentrate on little bits.
There's a great meme on keeping short meetings, which is everybody has to be in a plank position during the meeting.
See, there you go. Got to hold a deep squat.
Those are 45-second meetings, man. They're highly effective, I'll tell you.
45, I wouldn't last that long. Jeez, I tell you what. Paulie, I reckon there's a lot to him. I mean, unpack in this one. Like, I haven't even got into arguments.
Bro, it could be a 3-4 part, man. We can get into this, and I think it's worthwhile as well, man, because a lot of people have a deep desire to be able to deal with difficult people. You know, they really can.
There's the whole conflict resolution side of things. There's whole dealing with arguments. I was even thinking about, I think we've also, the line's been blurred between criticism and insults. I think there's something to be talked about there. Yeah. In terms of you're making the problem personal.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? There's you've touched on it just before, the whole cultural side of things. You know, dealing with people who can speak more than one language. I'm so amazed by you. I've been trying to learn 2 separate languages this year because I gave up on the 3rd one, and it's just going backwards. It's my brain just doesn't take it in. It knows the words, doesn't want to play. Anyway, so if you can speak 2 languages or more, hats off to you. But we've spoken about it briefly before, how there can be translation issues. There's also words that mean the same thing or different people. So there's all that. Also, I think there's, apart from just the technical and maybe HR side of things, I know that's been pretty stereotypical, you know, technically minded person versus the people in HR. There also could be problems in terms of age-based or experience-based when it comes. This is the old knowing, slower way, and this is the new, young, energetic, let's get it done, kind of doesn't see the repercussions. So there's all those. There's a lot of different ways to clash. I mean, all this could end up, it's not really anyone else that's difficult, it is you who is difficult. So being self-aware enough to realize that you've got some behavior problems, not you, but I wouldn't say that about you, mate, but you know.
Well, you know that's true, man. It wouldn't be an assumption.
I just wouldn't say it to you.
That would be fact, baby.
That's fact. That's fact. And so we can talk about being self-aware enough to understand that you're the one having problems, and how do you change as well? So there's a lot to talk about on this one. I think we might have to put a pin in it here and bang the rest of it out next week. And there's
Beautiful.
even different ways of approaching certain conversations. How you ask questions or how you give feedback can be game changing.
Absolutely, 100%.
Be the difference between actually asking for an argument and conflict, as opposed to the same question reworded can ask you for help.
Absolutely, 100%.
And it's a fine line between the two. It just depends on which word you start the sentence with.
Yeah. Or even your tone, and so much of that as well. It's or whether you've actually got whether you're listening with intent or whether you're just going through the motions because you know the path you want to take. Yeah.
That's it. Actively listening. Are you listening to reply, or are you listening to learn something? Are you listening to the whole sentence? Have you come in with preconceived ideas? There's a lot to talk about. So I think we'll put a pin in it there, and we'll leave it till next week. We'll put part 2. We'll leave it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, 100%, man.
100%. Like all series, they have this big cliffhanger, and then you come back next week and nothing's really changed. So maybe that's what we do. Appreciate all your feedback. We had a pretty good result from the webinar we ran. I understand Monday, which was selling into a difficult market. From all accounts, it was quite well received. A couple of questions and there'll be more of those coming.
And I'm thinking as well, because being in a situation where I'm training so many different people on the regular, we're training people on the regular, we get to see trends that are happening. And I think what we'll do, and we maybe got to put a name around it or something like that, the market updates, Australian market updates, or sharing trends, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm seeing. And I was thinking about it today. If I see it once in a month, I've seen it. If I've seen it twice, that's a coincidence. If I see it 3 times, it's a trend. And I want to tell people about it with regards to getting ahead of it, because I'm seeing trends changing on the regular. Whilst human behavior doesn't change at its core base, I do see a fair number of trends that are coming through. So I think that might be nice and valuable to people as well. Be sort of a lunch and learn maybe once a month or something like that. What do you reckon about that? How does that sound to you, my man?
I think it's a great idea. I've spoken to you a few times before about how you're in a position where you're training so many different people from so many different industries. You're exposed to a lot of different problems, issues, trends, all that kind of thing, that it allows you to get quite a good insight onto what is coming up, what you're seeing, what you're happening, and not in just sales industry and not in just, certain industries, finance or tech. You've got a whole range of them. So right through us Neanderthals in the trades, which doesn't take too long to figure out. You just don't give us crayons because we generally eat them. So apart from all that, no, I think it's a great idea, and just to top people up on what's going on.
No, I think it'll be valuable. We can keep it to 45 minutes. We'll be strict with that time as well. 45 minutes a month. Nice little update on what I'm seeing, and then at least, because I'm convinced I see things that other people don't see, and when I say that, I don't mean it arrogantly. I mean, you can't see the wood for the trees sometimes. When you're in the jar, you can't read the label when you're in the jar. And I see things that cause conflict for people, and they're in blind spots. They really are. So I think we'll cover off a few things like that. I think the next one we'll do is on leadership, because I'm seeing some challenges that are coming up there. With regards to workload allocations and some of the communication aspects there as well. So watch this space, folks. Watch this space.
Thank you. Sounds very good. As always, catch us on the social media, mainly LinkedIn, or Facebook, and any questions you've got, fire them in. Happy to help.
Fantastic.
Looking for training? Hit Paulie up. You got some days left for next year?
I'm sitting at about 65-70% capacity for next year, which is beautiful. I'm very grateful to have a lot of work coming in, which is great. That's up to my sort of my minimum level. But always happy to talk further. I won't just take on work for the sake of taking on work. It's like, if it's not a good fit, I'll let people know. If it is a good fit, then obviously we can do what we can do there.
Excellent. Thank you, Paulie. Thank
Beautiful.
you. Another Sunday morning.
Sunday morning.
Thanks, everyone.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care, mate.
Have a great week. See ya.
Cheers.